Even though my sibling was there growing up, she had a very different childhood than I did. And I had to decide to go no contact with my sibling. I realized that I was being totally gaslit because yes, living and being raised by Big Pam created post-traumatic stress disorder.
Hey friends, this is the Next Level Glam podcast, and I'm Glam Gal. Thank you for joining me as I discuss all things transformation inside and out with my sisters in Christ. Pull up a chair, it's about to go next level.
Hey there, welcome to the Next Level Glam podcast. I'm Glam Gal, your host. Get your own Lonnies and let's catch up. I feel so grateful to be able to sit here in a more normal state than I've been able to sit here in probably, I don't know how many episodes. God is so good. One of those things that we cling to, we don't even know if we really believe it sometimes, to the tenacity that we do in the up times. I know that myself, as I was really in the trenches, the deep, deep trenches of what I've been going through, I would say it, but I didn't know if my soul or my spirit really agreed with it because life was really getting pretty tough for me to handle. The first thing I want to say is I always made it a point to say that I wanted to show up more authentic and real, and how it was kind of a struggle. And I was kind of living a double life in the sense where I was letting people around me know that I had a podcast and stuff, and the people that I thought were closest to me, you know, people will support you or they don't support you, whatever. But it became clear to me that I wasn't really being as forward as I could be because somebody might be listening. I didn't want to hurt their feelings. And since that time, I have gone no contact with my only sibling. And that was something that was really holding me back because it wasn't even too many episodes ago that I was making excuses for them, you know what I mean, and excuses for myself to keep them in my life. After I went no contact with her, I started blocking a lot of people that were kind of reminiscing on my page that didn't really need to be on my Facebook anymore. Started blocking people, and then I started realizing that some people were trying to create new accounts and follow me on my social media and stuff, which is just crazy and creepy to me. And if they are actually listening to this podcast now in regards to the main narcissist in my life, get help. But if it was my sibling listening out of curiosity, I still pray for her every single day that she comes to the light about the situation. You know, like I've always said, when you're in Christ and you apologize, there's always room for forgiveness. And unfortunately, just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that you allow them access to your life to keep hurting you the same way. And that's what I was doing. I was allowing someone very close to me, you know, have access to me and continue to hurt me by gaslighting me and minimizing the things that I have gone through. And that was enough to kind of make me go insane. So I don't know if you know this about me at all, but I love the show Stranger Things. And I have been there since like day one. And we're going to be starting that last final season not too far from now. My family and I have been rewatching Stranger Things obsessively, trying to, you know, go through them all again and prepare for the new release. But what I really wanted to pull from that was the season where it's the mind flayer. And I'm pretty sure that's season 2, where we learn that Will is possessed by this thing they call the mind flayer, which invades your mind and it flays you. It basically makes you be like it and conform to it and what it wants you to do. It makes you assimilate, essentially. And I just wanted to bring that up because it was like a relevant connection point that came to me when I was watching it recently, was how Big Pam, the head narcissist matriarch in my narcissistic, toxic, dysfunctional family cult, how she invades your mind, right? Because I know a lot of people, including myself, would be like, you know, why don't you move away? Because if you're new here and you don't know that Big Pam is my birth person, or the fact that reason why it's such a spicy scenario is because she's literally right across the street. Well, now you do. And it doesn't matter how far I would move. If I don't heal that whole power trip that's going on in my brain, I don't think I'd ever have peace. And I really realized that. And it was about a year ago that I was really starting to want to get some help in therapy because I felt like I had come to the end of myself, understanding my situation, what the right and wrong things were to do, my reactions on certain things. And it took me a long, long time to get that help. And I just kept putting it off because I just didn't think it was that important, especially when you surround yourself with people who make therapy sound like woo woo, or make it sound like, yeah, you need therapy. Like it's just, it just wasn't a great scenario to have, but I ignored it. And then in late May, I was sharing about how I had this clash, this implosion between me and Big Pam, and how my sibling was the juncture point as to how it all happened. It was like I had plans with little Big Pam, which is what I'm basically calling my sister now. And Big Pam was across the street, and we had a moment where she was basically setting me up to display reactionary abuse, which happened. I mean, I literally reacted in a way that anybody would react to somebody that was abused by them for decades of their life. And I remember my nervous system just being like in a jolted scenario, like almost out of body, like you have no control over yourself whatsoever. And you are looking around for support and protection, and there's none to be found. As a matter of fact, your sibling, who you think has your back because they've been there even before you were, being aware of the abuse and the toxicity and stuff like that. And all they tell you to do is to calm down and really minimize the situation. And it made me confused, and it definitely made me feel like, okay, well, maybe I definitely need the help, right? Because I was just all over the place, and I was asking my husband for help, and we did a few things to get the situation under control, in the sense of like reaching out again to let her know that we're no contact, regardless of the fact that she doesn't agree to that, because I'm not a person to Big Pam. I'm just something, I'm an object for her to dump her crap on and spew whatever stuff that she's never healed. That's what she likes to do. So basically, from that point, I kept trying to work my life around avoiding this woman as much as possible, while entertaining my sibling and really trying to support and be that sister, because I was raised in total dysfunction, obviously. But Big Pam would always tell me and my sibling that all we would have is each other, like friends come and go, but you'll be sisters forever. And that sounds super sweet. And that's, what I always was raised to do, was just to always make sure my relationship was great with my sibling, because if I didn't have her, I wouldn't have anything, according to Big Pam, right? And it allowed me to be treated in so many horrible ways and accept such horrible treatment on myself, and be abandoned, and just keep accepting people back in my life, even though I know that I didn't really have their loyalty, or maybe even their respect. Who knows? I really don't want to put myself completely in their perspective, because it's not really what it's about. But it was about me finally coming to a point of this new urging for help, because there was a scenario that happened that just opened up Pandora's box in a way that I really wasn't prepared for, even though I was kind of seeing it in time. And what had happened was, as I was having a beautiful day, decided to stop by my sibling's house to drop some stuff off and hang with her for a second. Right when I had my guard down, Big Pam went down the street, which she had no business doing, because she didn't really need to come down that street at all. She saw my car there and took the opportunity to harass me, because she gets her narc supply off of frustrating me, scaring me, harassing me, and getting off on her delusion that everything is just peachy keen and that we're all going to reconcile, which couldn't be further from the truth. But I didn't even realize it was her driving, because she had gotten a new car. So she was slow. I saw this car like slowing down as I was sitting in the garage with the door open, with my sibling, just enjoying a nice iced coffee moment. And I saw all of a sudden Big Pam honk her horn, and I realized it was her. And she was like waving at me like she was going to see me at a barbecue on Saturday. That obviously was enough to set me into some situation. You know what I mean? Like it set me to ruminating and just wondering like how this is happening. But I also felt verified, because I looked over to my sibling and was like, see, like she knows she's delusional. She knows that we're in no contact, and she's still trying to invade my peace. Even though I felt like me and my sibling were in a great place, she had the audacity to look at me and say, I wish you would just get over it. I remember going back and forth a couple of sentences, and she said to me, that she could actually see partly, from my abuser's standpoint as to, why she does what she does to excuse her insane psychotic behavior. And it was like, it didn't happen in a snap of a finger, but I just felt like in the Stranger Things moment where that portal like opens, like the scab just like reopens, I felt that happening. By the next morning, I was just like ruminating over what I had heard, because what she had done to me was gaslight me and minimize my situation. And I realized what was going on there was triangulation, which I had read about many times with people sharing their no contact journey, that eventually they lose their siblings because, without us even realizing it, the narcissistic parent has been triangulating the siblings since birth, basically. So it's like, even though my sibling was there growing up, she had a very different childhood than I did. She's always kind of, whenever I bring something up, she'll always say, "Oh, I just, I've forgiven her for all that." And it has nothing really to do with that. It has to do with the fact that she lives in that state because it's what she knows. And she's used to that toxic cycle of, being that doormat that someone comes and drops their shit on and just take it and then, do the silent treatment and then love bomb them. Like, she knows how to do that cycle. What she doesn't know how to do is to leave that cycle. I really try not to judge because it's not my life to live, but I did have to judge the situation that does regard me. And I had to decide to go no contact with my sibling like overnight, because I realized that I was being totally gaslit and to be made crazy, that I had all these traumatic things happen to me growing up, and she just liked to minimize those things. I wasn't allowed to express that, because it puts them in a squirrely place. It like holds a mirror up to them and they don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, they don't like you calling it for what it is. It's total truth. She's seeing me suffer, like basically watching me mentally suffer and emotionally suffer from this situation. And the whole entire time, she's been gossiping about me behind my back like a flying monkey and sharing information behind my back. In that moment, when I realized that we were triangulated, that Big Pam had coaxed my sibling to deal with it, you know what I mean, to be okay with the scenario, or to rewrite the script so that she can continue abusing me and make it look like cherry pie. And it's not cherry pie, it's harassment. So I actually got really, really angry. It's more like a sad mad. What it felt like was season 3 of Stranger Things, where that big flesh monster gets put together, right? And then it bites Elle's leg and they chop it off, but there's a remainder of that flesh monster that's actually in Eleven's leg, and she has to use like her superpowers to like eradicate it out of her leg, and it's extremely painful and traumatic to watch. But like, that's what it felt like to cut and sever the trauma bond that I essentially had with my sibling, and this really messed up relationship that I thought was genuine sisterhood and genuine encouragement and support, where I realized I was like, just easily cast to the side and, never emotionally validated, and just so many different things that hurt me more than cutting off Big Pam. Like, that final ripping out of that thing that was tethered to me and casting it from me almost took me out in the month of September and October this year. And that's what really, I was grieving the relationship I never had with Big Pam, that I would never have. And then on top of it, I was grieving this relationship with this person that I thought had this bond with me that would survive pretty much anything. But I was also being reminded of things in the past where I was kind of seeing things through rose-colored glasses, that it was never like that. You know what I'm saying? It was never as easy as me and her being best friends and showing up for one another and stuff. And it was like basically me grieving something that I never had, and me grieving my inability to see it sooner and to do something about it sooner, because all of a sudden now it affects me as an aunt, like me and my niece. Like, I all overnight, like, I don't see her anymore. And also right now, currently, it means like me kind of negotiating how I'm going to cut contact with the family in regards to my daughter having access to them, because I'm realizing more and more that if they don't like you, they don't like your kid. And it's only a matter of time before they start really feeding off of your kid, basically. And that scares me to no end, because it is my job as a parent. But I am going to look like the master villain. And it's like, do I have it in me to be the villain that it takes to be regarded as, right? From the whole entire family, from whoever, to cut off what seems to be like a healthy grandma, grandpa, whatever relationship. And an even aunt relationship, because it's like the enablers that surround the narcissist are just as dangerous as the narcissist themselves. Like, I look back on so many instances that Big Pam just went heavy on me, like it was like a dart, like a laser beam right to me, and just dumping on me with, my stepfather standing there and my siblings standing there. And it's crazy what's going on, but is anybody jumping in to save the scapegoat? No, because they like the fact that they're not caught in the crosshairs. You know what I mean? And then I leave all kerbobbled because I'm like, what did I do to deserve that? Like, what did I do? All I did was, show up, and I just got screamed at. And then they're like gaslighting you, like, what? What do you mean? Like, that's just who she is. And we're family and we need to forgive. And it's just absolute insanity. So, me finding a therapist, it really came down to in the trenches where, like, I was so emotionally vulnerable during October. I would try to be stable in front of my kid and my husband while going through a sickness that swept through this house. And I felt so weak emotionally, where I would just fall into tears and like body racking sobs, and just the stability that I had had, which I, thought it just completely crumbled. Whatever I had left from what had happened in May, it just completely crumbled. I had nothing left. And it got to the point where it was really scary, guys. And I'm not trying to say this like I give them power by any means. Like I said, I hope they get help, because it's overt. And if you're not seeing that system in your family, like, and that someone's a narcissist, if you have a narcissistic parent, this is a family thing. This doesn't just end with you. It's a whole thing that they've set up, and you can act ignorant to it, but at your own detriment. You know what I mean? So I remember going to my husband and just sharing, because he feels stressed like everybody else, but like he was so in over his head with trying to help me, because it was like he doesn't understand what it's like to have this issue. You know what I mean? To literally keep getting your circle smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And that happens to me because obviously I was ostracized at a young age, being the scapegoat in my family, being separated from other people in my family, right? And then just being somebody who has more separating beliefs, right? And a little bit more conviction about things. It tends to give me a little bit more of a lone wolf personality. But I just got to the point where I realized how alone I really was, especially in these feelings, is what I mean. I just told him that I really needed help, like, really needed help. It was getting to the point where it was kind of scary for me. He was so good. My husband literally is the best. All I know how to say this year is like, he is just amazing. So our family is going through this cold. Our life is kind of falling apart day by day, where we're just kind of getting by. And his wife is like literally scraping the barrel, and he got the information needed. And this is where I really believe that God is just on top of the little things and the details where you need him and stuff. Because just like I shared with plastic surgery about how I just prayed about it, like did my research, but like prayed about it. And I found my surgeon like right away, right? And he was exactly what I needed. It's the same thing with the therapist, where it popped right up, you know what I mean? And it's actually this really cool place that uses like equine therapy, which I'll be probably doing further on down the line, which has to do with like horses, using horses to heal. Because apparently if you can establish boundaries with like 1,000-pound animal, you can establish boundaries with like anybody. Um, so I've had a few sessions with my therapist among all this craziness that's going on. And I'm not going to lie, it's one of those places where, like, she always encourages that it's a place where I don't have to be strong and I can let the emotions out. And it's very much like BYOT, bring your own tissues, because you think you're not going to need them. And the first couple, I would have to take some from her box. I'm like, if you know you're going to come here to cry, bring your own tissues, Jillian, right? So I've definitely had some moments in therapy where I really feel how much I've worked on keeping my emotions close to me and not letting them out of the way, because they were never validated by Big Pam or Little Big Pam. I'm not allowed to have feelings or they like to say that I'm the angry child, right? Like I'm the one who's always had the anger problems, and they don't want to see how it's because I've been so sad and then, poured on and the scapegoat, you know what I mean, and kicked around and stuff, that they produce this little gremlin that they want to pull out of the closet anytime they need an excuse about who is the worst person and stuff. And I get to be that person. Well, not anymore. You know what I mean? And so I had to do what I had to do. And I'm really glad that I did decide to go no contact with my sibling before my therapy, because I can honestly say that she would not be the best thing to be a supportive to that in this journey if I were sharing about things that I'd be learning about in therapy, because she doesn't herself see the wrongness of the situation. And I will tell you, to be open and transparent with you guys, because you've been here through the journey, that I was diagnosed with PTSD, the trauma brain, and moderate depressive disorder. And that was kind of scary. The depressive disorder was kind of scary because I was worried about how that affects my daughter, because you don't want to inflict sadness on your kid, right? Like I'm always trying to push that down, because I'm like, it's not a good time to have a breakdown. You have a daughter who needs to see you strong and show up and all of those things. I was very validated by the PTSD diagnosis, because I knew that my brain was going into a panic. Like anytime I would get a sign of Big Pam or hear her or whatever, it would go to my lizard brain and my body would tense up, because I really felt, and I really feel in myself, in my most, what they say, basic self, is that I'm in danger. And so your brain is meant to be there to help you survive. Your PTSD takes over, because yes, living and being raised by Big Pam created post-traumatic stress disorder. And now it's about me getting my upper level brain to work with my lower level brain. And that has to do with kicking the mind flayer out. It has to do with the fact that every time I go into a panic mode, that I give myself the grace and empathy, a mother figure, essentially, like reparenting myself with grace and empathy that I never had as a child. So that has been huge, that I do realize that I'm taking steps. I've definitely dealt with some mind fog the last few weeks as I'm going back and forth when I want to pull back, when things get super stressful. I want to reduce into panic and tears. And then I can feel my other brain like rationally being like, that you're going to be okay. God has you. You're safe. This isn't going to be the situation forever, that kind of thing. And life continues on, and it's been getting progressively better. But there was a peak bad point in early October, mid-October, where I just didn't even recognize myself anymore. I'm trying to connect with people who might be going through the same thing and encourage people that God is not mad at you for getting help. And he definitely has blessed people with the skill and science to understand the brain. And I think that's where I'm saying is, like, I come from the family where it's like, oh, your brain literally has PTSD. We don't recognize that. You need Jesus to heal your problems because it's you. And it has nothing to do with the fact that we abused you and gaslit you and just treated you like shit for most of your life. Like, your PTSD just comes out of nowhere, no accountability whatsoever. And I get really mad at my sibling when she would tell me things like, you need to chill out, like you need to relax, and just completely dismiss that whole entire scenario of what I was going through. And it really killed me and was like death by 1,000 cuts every time that she would do it. And this last time, where she literally saw the abuse and harassment happen right there in front of her face in real time, and then turned to me and gaslight me about me being the problem of needing to get over it, right? The child that needs to get over it, not the adult that needs to grow up and stop being emotionally immature, but she can't because she's a freaking narcissist. Okay. That was the final cut that, they say, like, the straw that broke the camel's back. I realized I wanted to choose myself. And it really comes down to the fact that, just like I am struggling in my way from like deep, deep mother wounds on top of other wounds and a broken brain, I realized that she has a deep, deep mother wound. So I ended up choosing me and my family over being complacent and giving room for Big Pam to get at me through my sibling, because that's really what it's about. And it's unfortunate. There's always going to be that part of me that wants that big sister who wants to be a big sister. You know what I mean? Something that I was making up in my head for many years. And it's sad because now my daughter's involved, and it's like I feel like every time I turn around, there's another relationship that's removed from her life because from her point of view, is just removing someone that is, it's fine. It doesn't look toxic, but I know what I know, you know. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect either and that I always brought a plate of sunshine to the situation or the relationship, but obviously I was in the place where they say it's the strongest ones that go and get help, and it's the ones that were abused the most that leave the family and run away from the family. And it's like, I know that my sibling had a lot of abuse growing up, okay, but apparently not as much as what I received, because she was able to feel like the golden child and willing to dance their dance, you know what I'm saying? But I just see things a lot more clearly right now. And at the same time as things were starting to level up and I was going to therapy, some really exciting things were happening, like me going to my pre-op appointment for my fourth round of combination surgeries that I've been talking about. It has been a long road. I mean, I've been waiting to do my arms, like I've said in the prior episodes, since puberty, but definitely since 2020 when I started surgery. I couldn't wait to get to the point where we could really tackle the arms, because it will make things look so much more cohesive. And it's been a long struggle of wondering how it was going to happen and having things work out. But I would love to say that, you know, behind the scenes, God has been moving tremendously. I mean, aside from like being sick and going through this depression, homeschooling and keeping my reselling business, our car took a shit, you know what I mean? So that was going on, and then getting this bill paid for the surgery on time. And I also have labs tomorrow. I got to go to the doctor and get all my labs and basically be cleared for surgery. There's just all these other little steps that have to happen before surgery. It's about 2.5 weeks, and I'm actually really excited about this round. The doctor, he says he's going to let me be the experiment where he's going to use these things called Bridgets, which are little plastic applicators on the incision of the arm. Well, they can go wherever the doctor wants to use it for the incisions, but they help reduce the tension on the incision so that it helps with scarring and all of those things. And that's usually like an extra cost. So I was super blessed that he wanted to use me as like basically an experiment. And then we're also doing some more fat transfer to the hip and the butt. And he's doing some really cool ultrasound, deep diving technology to really pop out some areas that need a little bit help, to really just bring everything together. It's going to be a pretty extensive recovery. I know this about myself at this part of the journey, where it sounds really exciting. I am really excited, but recovery is, and it's the thing that people don't really talk about a lot, or you know, and people don't really see behind the scenes. They just see how you go from zero to hero, and they really like to neglect that whole entire giant chasm of time where there's a lot going on. Just kind of mentally preparing for that, happening in about 2.5 weeks, and also physically preparing for that with my family and getting things in line. And I might drop an episode on that sometime between now and then, and I hope I catch you there. It'll probably be a little bit more of a lighthearted episode, just to kind of connect with my surgery girlies, you know, my weight loss girlies who have questions about plastic surgery, and kind of going through those things, because everybody thinks plastic surgery is just the easy way out or whatever, but it's actually a super hard road, and it takes a lot of trust, and it takes a lot of patience. And I think that's the one thing I was learning through this downtime of being sick and not at my best, was this is a little insight of it can feel like when you go through recovery, you can feel very alone and in the trenches. And I'm just glad that I did what I did to prepare me for this, because I realize now that, like, you know, either people are really happy for you, or you're not. Like, you realize that there are some people who are so miserable in themselves that they can't be happy at all for other people, even if it's the ones that they profess to love. Actually, about a week or so after that entire thing happened, where she gaslit me really hard, where things were enveloping in me to start really seeing things for as they were, where she was starting to pick up that I was distancing myself. And she asked me if I was mad. And I didn't have the heart to tell her if I was mad, because I wasn't really mad. I was sad, and then sad mad. So I just kind of ignored it, because at the end of the day, it's like, you should know if you hurt someone, you know, right? And I shouldn't have to sit here and explain it at this point, you know. I feel more at ease than ever to sit here and throw the chips up in the air and see where they fall, where I thought I was doing that before, but I wasn't, because I was really keeping myself bound up protecting the family. And I thought I was not, because I was willing to talk about my no contact situation with Big Pam and stuff, but I wasn't really. I was protecting this part of the family as well, which exposes a lot of dysfunction, and me just learning about how to be my own best friend and be the empathetic friend and mother that I never had, the sister to myself that I never had. And am I grateful for the people in my life? Hell yes. I have never been more grateful for my daughter, for my husband, for the couple of friends that have been in my DMs, and specifically a good friend who's been in my life for such a long time and going through and has gone through really hard family relationships as well, which has been such a support. And I know it seems like we don't have much some days in terms of support or understanding, and we feel alone. But if you just take a second and look around, there's someone there that God has provided to make the tough days just a little bit easier. And I will say that if you see someone that needs help, reach out. Don't be afraid to let them know what they mean to you, and don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're someone who's really at the bottom of the barrel, don't be afraid to ask for help. That was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me this year, was seeing my husband step up in so many different ways to take care of his wife, who was really going through things that you wish wasn't your problem. You just want to be normal, right? And I can't promise that I'm going to be normal after all this treatment stuff. I am who I am. God uses the crazy, foolish things of the world to confound the wise, to confound the mighty. And if He can burst through this, very weak vessel to just speak to others about how His faithfulness and His goodness and His deliverance, which doesn't always look like the deliverance we think of. Like, I thought deliverance for me would be like, get me out of this hellhole. I can't be around these people anymore. But it was a deliverance up here in the mind, to see what I needed to see to take me to that next level. And who knows where He's going to take me from here. And it just feels really good to be on this mountain peak. Lord knows, I know healing is not just a complete linear experience. There's a lot of, sometimes regression or bad days and stuff, but right here, right now, and the exciting things I have coming up, I'm grateful. So many things God has come through with providing a newer car, and getting the funds needed to do this surgery, and have the support from my husband to get this surgery, and the insurance that my husband has to use to heal my brain, and the grace to go after that, and the liberty to live the life that I am in Christ. It's not one of those things that's always easy to talk about when you are open about your situation and your struggles and stuff. You're basically just put on a post of being the weak one or the villain or whatever, and being, coming to terms with that sooner. It's one of those things you just have to come to terms with. And I do, you know what I mean? I realize that I am not the most virtuous person. I can't survive in large groups. I can't survive in the institutional church. I can't survive toxic environments. These are things that the Lord's really brought me through in 37 years to learn about myself. And I'm just kind of taking strides as I learn how to cope the best way I can in order to have like a very healthy life with the ones that He's given me to love, and the ones that were here to love me. And there's a lot more healing to do. And as I grow and encounter certain things, I look forward to sharing that with you. If you have any struggles and you need some support, do not hesitate to come over and follow me at the Next Level Glam podcast over on Instagram. Pop in my DMs. I'd love to encourage you and pray for you, and remind you that there are trials and tribulations in this life, and what it's there for is to help us build patience, and bring us to hope, to teach us certain things, and to grow our faith. And it sucks to hear it, to have it so simplified when your life seems so utterly complicated. We are here for a reason, and it's not time for us to give up. It's not even quarter to that time. Like, God is my provider. He's a great father, all of these things. He sustains us, and you'll just be like me, like today, where you just wake up and you realize that he's brought you through it, and He's given you a moment of respite. And I'm really soaking it up before the next big wave that the end of 2025 is going to bring, but very excited about it. And like I said, I hope to check in really soon. If you have someone in your mind that flays you and is your thought process, and you need to push that person out and replace it with someone who may not even really exist, but maybe it's yourself. Maybe it's your best self being the best compassionate person talking to you. Watch how you're talking to yourself. And the other part is when somebody that doesn't seem as harmful as the main person you've removed, it's still leeching off of you. It still needs to be ripped from you, and it's going to hurt like hell, but you're going to survive. And not only survive, but you're going to thrive. And it's not going to feel like that right away. I think it's going to feel close to death when you make the cuts necessary. I'm not there yet either, but I believe that in time, I'm going to wonder why I put myself in such a small box for so long and catered to people's emotions before my own and let myself be some kind of emotional support animal, which is something that we should never really be for anybody. But grace, it's a new start. It's not exactly where I thought I'd end up here at the end of 2025, but here I am. And if you want to follow more behind the scenes details as I approach the procedure and as I go through therapy and stuff like that, be sure to come again over to Instagram at the Next Level Glam Podcast. Be sure to follow, and I hope to see you there. In the meantime, remember to rest and grow in His grace.